companies in an age. If you want to split into two, that's fine. We're just trying to get punch in there right at the top. Put the story in context. So why is it important now and how it came about? Again, it may be that there is a much wider story in the news agenda at the moment, which clearly, if you make sure you put that quite high up, it will obviously give it an extra user. Maybe it's the first of its kind. Maybe no one's done it before. I don't know. The point is that you really need to try to ensure that you've got high up there context. Quote from someone important or relevant. Obviously, it's someone from your company. Obviously, or your brand. Perhaps it's a clinician. It's someone who's got some weight behind them. But again, I think it's really important that you get that quote high there so the journalists can see that credibility. And crucially, don't just have them quoting, saying the same thing as you've got in the first 2 or 3 paragraphs. Have them quote something that provides a little bit of extra information. So in other words, it's almost like you're writing 4 paragraphs and then you say to the person you're quoting, how about, can you say this, is it right to put your name to this, and it's just that's fine. And crucially, and again, you'd be amazed how many press releases or briefings that I used to get as a journalist where they don't put any contact details on. And I'm not talking about an email address. Put your phone number on there, landline and mobile, certainly mobile. The journalists, if they're interested, will either come back on email or most journalists will pick up the phone and want to talk to you. So for goodness sake, make sure you've got contact details on there. It sounds ridiculously simple, but so many PR companies, so many firms, so many press sections or sectors can do not do it. That, as I say, is a very, very simplified view of it, but trust me, that is how journalists write their story, and that is how you need to communicate to them, because they're the people you need to actually win over your product to get to land in the right place. Jenny, I think probably whistle stop ended. Do we have any questions?
Yep, we have time for about 10 minutes of questions.
I hope someone's got questions. No.
A470, journalist asks you about that, and
Say again.
if a journalist responds and says can this be an exclusive story or feature, how do you deal with that situation?
We pitch, where possible, I pitch most of my stories as an exclusive. It's an important point, one which I haven't, because it's sort of the complexities and come up, but essentially, especially for Sunday paper or Sunday publication, they will always be wanting an exclusive. I think there's a big misconception about Sunday publications. I think people think they're sort of sum of the previous week's news and they're not really that important. Sundays still now set the news agenda for the following week. They're the papers that the story that the politicians most fear and the big companies most fear. They're the ones that often have more room and they'll often give stories more more space, and because on a Sunday you've got daily Monday newspapers scratching around trying to find stories, they will often follow up the story that's in the Sunday paper. So you're going to get 2 bites of the cherry. And if you pitch as an exclusive, then of course the journalist is more likely to run it because they know no one else has got it. Also, you pitch exclusive to dailies, and it depends when as well. There are certain days I would never, for example, pitch an exclusive or any story on a Wednesday to a daily newspaper on a Thursday, because all the local newspapers around the country, and there are still thousands of them, nearly all come out on a Thursday, and they will syndicate all their stories on a Wednesday to all the nationals hoping to get a national bite. So Thursday newspapers are packed, the agenda's really, really busy. So really, best time to pitch, depending on what it is, but for a national, I would send a really pithy, tight email, 7 o'clock in the morning, send it to the journalists you've identified. Again, that's often when you, believe it or not, they'll get some emails through, but a lot of people start sending emails about 9 o'clock. And by then, they've already begun to think about their story for that day. Most newspapers have conference at 11, editorial conference. By then, they would decide what stories they want to go for, the stories are discussed in conference, and by 12 o'clock, bang, they lock down the stories and the journalists are going to go. Never ever, as I said to you earlier, pitch a story at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon to a daily journalist. You will find them very, very tetchy. you know, you can send an email about 6ish and say, should have cleared their work. I'm just not really interested in looking at it. So morning's the best time.
And if you were to send an email to Sunday paper and say this would be an exclusive for your paper, could you do the same and send it to another Sunday paper in the hope that one of them bites it? Or would you just
If they both go
focus
for it,
on
then
one?
what do you say to them? That's the thing, exactly. You could do, and then they both see the story appears in both papers, and then you've never, that happened once to me, and they're like, well, look, you told me it was exclusive just to us, it wasn't, so that's the last time we run a story about the company.
So just the one, like,
Yeah. If, what you can say is, if you pitch on a Tuesday morning, you can say to them, I'm pitching this to you as an exclusive, please let me know by 6 o'clock this evening if you don't want it, otherwise I'm going to take it elsewhere.
Okay.
And for a Sunday, you can kind of get Sunday newspapers start formalising their news lists on a Wednesday evening. By Wednesday evening, pretty much got the news section locked down. They discuss that in conference on Thursday, and then the journalists start writing. Most of the paper, what we call, has gone to bed by Friday night. So Saturday is what is a live day. It's things like if there's a plane crash or that sort of thing, really. So the earlier in the week, the better. For most news sections, journalists don't work on Sundays and Mondays, so they email them on Monday to work on
I find that it can be quite difficult to inoculate against embellishment, and in healthcare, and especially health tech, that's really important. So making sure your statements are evidence-based, not to the point where it's kind of so embellished it's not evidence-based, or embellishment of approaches. So the most obvious one would be, you know, using AI when you actually haven't used AI. And I found, more with research, but I found it really difficult to talk with journalists about the risks of using specific words when they don't represent. So how would you kind of navigate that when journalists are trying to kind of push you down one route because it sounds sexier, but actually it's quite misrepresentative?
Yeah. Actually, you to ask the trickiest question. I think you've got to be very honest with the journalist. It partly actually depends on how decent the journalist is as well, frankly. It sounds awful, but there are some publications I won't mention where they do tend to embellish even if they've got the facts and the story appears. And I think if I would also, by the way, make sure that any of these points you have, you get across as a paper trail, so you actually email them as well. So if the story does appear, and by the way, it might be the best thing since science spread to raise awareness, but you might have the scientific people saying, well, this is embellished, Maxine, this isn't. Well, actually say, look, I made it very, very clear to the journalists that actually, you know, this is the way we have to they should go down for it to be a kind of honest story. Where it goes then sort of depends on what the story says. Because I've had examples where there has been embellishment, but actually, do you know what? The impact has been so positive that the company guys have sort of swallowed it and sort of decided that as long as they're very clear from then onwards, that actually, you know, the facts need to be communicated in a very clear way. And it's a difficult one to answer. I think it really depends on the journalist. You've got to be really, really clear with them and really firm with them. And that quite depends on the briefing in the first place as well. Don't put language in there that you think is going to kind of lead them to sort of, you know, flourish it and kind of embellish it.
if I take the flip side of that question,
Yes.
how
Do you make it
risky is it, do you think, if you then see some, you know, really spurious claims and, you know, lack of evidence in some of the journalism, and you as a company then, you know, in various ways, whether it's on social media or it's a letter to the editor or whatever format, you actually challenge that journalist?
What, say it's a competitor or?
Just as, even as a whistleblower, or even as someone who just is challenging the evidence of that particular piece and saying, well, that's just not right.
It depends whether or not you want to get. I mean, what I'm about to say is just based on sitting in the usual, and not necessarily right. It depends kind of whether or not you want to get. You then want to get your own product or story away in that publication. Unless it's something that is massively wrong, it's a big, and they need to know. Then they need to be made aware of that. And the letter to the editor should be a clarification or correction. If you're just a little unhappy about the language they've used, you're probably going to really just piss off the journalists by telling that. So it's a fine line. But if it's factually wrong, then it should be clarified, it should be corrected.
Or even just enhanced and just saying, you would have gotten the point better.
Tricky one, right? Because to answer Maxine's question as well, you know, you're always, or especially with science now, you are trying to embellish it to make it sexy and make it interesting and make it, you know, but at the same
Science
time.
is sexy alone, come on.
Pardon?
Science is sexy alone.
Of course. So it's a fine line, but I think if it really is factually incorrect and wrong, then be firm about getting clarification. And a decent publication will make sure they print retraction.
Yeah, I'm thinking less of, sort of, you got to sit on the naughty step and get a retraction. It's more that, you're coming out, you have an opportunity to be the voice of the truth
Yes.
in that.
Well, in that case, you go to a rival newspaper.
Yeah.
Say, look, they
Yeah.
printed this, it's completely embedded, it's
Yeah.
absolutely right. Why do you want something to shoot?
Yeah.
The rival newspaper, won't then be rude about the original story, but they'll then actually think, well, I've got a better story.
Yeah, very good point.
But it has to be a different sort of story. It can't be the same thing, just slightly better. Fleet Street sort of works in it's a comic book. It works in a very bold black and white world. You've got to make sure the journalists who themselves say they're simple souls and they're very busy. So it's got to be quite clear cut.
So you talk about the different timing of when to approach.
Yes.
Are we dealing more with sort of bulk and more C2C, so B2B, sorry, rather than to general public? So is it a specific timing when it's good to put a blog out, or is it generally more for business communication purposes as well?
I think it depends who your market is. I wouldn't put a blog out I probably wouldn't put a blog out on depends what your market is. I was about to say I wouldn't put a blog on a Friday evening, but actually, in some markets I would put a blog out on Friday evening because lots of people are at home on Fridays and Saturdays and they're sitting on their phones and they're reading. In that way, things have changed. But I think in terms of, very briefly, who's your target market? I don't have much time.
Just sort of the major players, so the big players that basically everyone else is targeting here as well, or collaborators that
Right.
so the big pharmaceuticals, the big tech companies.
Right, well in that case, I think the blog should be a morning blog. It should go out, early. But that's the thing when people are often reading, either in the morning before they get to work, on the train. That's the time when by the time they get into work, they've got email, they've got meetings. So send out a blog at 6 o'clock, send out a blog at 7 o'clock. They send it at 10 in the morning, when by then our day is half over and people are getting on and doing things. That's when I would send them.
How do you rate social media against mainstream?
I think that a lot of companies feel they need to have a social media presence because they're losing out on something, but often they don't quite know what they're losing out on. And I think that social media can be very, very powerful, but I also think that the way we use it is because we tend to really try to amplify our clients through the mainstream media. They all now obviously have big Twitter handles, so we tend to then use the publication's own Twitter handle because they've got sometimes, the Mail's got something like 7 or 8 million followers or something like that. So if they end up tweeting it, then your kind of work's been done for
They
them.
don't always do much.
No, that is the advantage of using something that's contact center, I appreciate, but it's not always easy. I think also Twitter can be a double-edged sword. I think that you've got to be careful what you're tweeting, and you've got to think about the consequences, because once a tweet is out there, it remains out there. Even if you delete it, there's still ways of finding that. And I think that less is more. I really do, and I feel that there is so much noise out here these days. There's so much communications noise out there, and with the proliferation of fake news and that sort of thing, that's one thing. A lot of clients who are coming back to me increasingly saying, look, we want to revert to the more traditional media where we know that our audiences are going to know the source that they're going to it's very difficult with social media often to quantify a claim, whereas if it's been in a genuine big piece publication, it does, whether you like it or not, it does have that credibility. And that's really important with increasing professional things, in my experience.
Unfortunately, that will be our last question for right now, but thank you so much. If you all can join me in thanking Will be here. And one thing that actually, right now, to kind of get us in transition as we move into our other responsibilities, I do want all the folks to kind of give, is if I can actually have folks turn to a person near you and just say something that either you're still quite curious about that Will's talk perhaps brought up, or something that you actually really are going to be taking away, take a moment and just highlight that as we do that transition, and then we'll introduce our next speaker. So you take 2 minutes to turn to your neighbor and introduce yourself and something that
Turn to your neighbor. I'm here today to just attend One Health Tech London. We inspire, celebrate, enable and champion diversity in health tech, and absolutely wonderful in Health Foundry. Thank you. I'm fine, thank you. Next one is Meta Speech, embody your brand, grow faster through confident communication. So I'm here attending this, and I tell you what, I'm absolutely delighted to be here today. Your one and only Juliet Makapila attending this event, and of course I love learning every day, and sharing and learning is something that I do every time, and anytime you see me I am always there because I believe in learning and sharing. And thank you so much for everyone who is coming in to watch. And my battery has run out, so I'm using David's phone. So this video will be transferred to Juliet Mahapila and then be sent to the Health Foundry so they can tweet it. And yes, lovely to see everyone. Absolutely lovely. We inspire, celebrate, enable and champion diversity in health tech. Joining in One Health Tech London event. Thank you. That's why I booked it.
No, I don't.
Hi, following. Lovely to see you, and thank you so much for coming in and joining in. Helena team, I did make it. Yes, I ran. I did make it, just about made it. And thank you so much for the work that you've done with Women Make Change. So I just came from there and rushed to this next event. It was absolutely wonderful to joining you. So thank you so much for Women Make Change. And here I am just understanding how to support other people in branding and all that kind of stuff, and especially in telling our story in the health sector and well-being. So I'm here sharing that as well. Many thanks for everyone watching. So today,
and that's included thus far how you communicate the story of especially your company, your brand, how you have to use the media to amplify your message out there. Part 2, I want to introduce you to Mariana Lucia Marquez. Sue is the founder of Meta Speech and comes from a background of choreography and also public speaking, unlike me. So, drawing from all of that background, she is able to pull that into Meta Speech's training and develops the necessary soft speaking skills that actually help you to embody confidence as you deliver your message. So she has worked with a variety of different teams from big to small, and including tech startups who have gone out and raised lots of money through things like BBC Dragon Den, etc. So there's lots of hopeful little nuggets that you can take into how you communicate about your health tech story. You are the one who is actually going out there and speaking either on a big stage or perhaps one-on-one to another person. So, right?
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Before I start, maybe I'll ask you, is going away? Is that right? No. So my area of practice of public speaking training is mostly helping startup founders pitch investors. So have you pitched? Are you in that journey towards pitching? Journey? Wasn't it like soon coming to that? Okay. And the rest, how many of you are entrepreneurs? Okay. All right, so 9 of you are entrepreneurs. Cool, that helps me to make sure I deliver something that is interesting. So I'll share a bit about why embodying as a thing is very important and very useful. And then we're going to stand up and do exercises, and it's a practical session where you'll learn key things on how to use your body when you're presenting. And it does everything I'll teach is about standing up, you know, like in this kind of situation or in a meeting room, a boardroom type thing. But it does translate into sitting. So if someone reminds me at some point towards the end, like, oh, did you say how this works when you're sitting in a meeting? And do that. Because you'll have lots of that, like pitching, presenting, talking about what you do will happen in both situations. That's about me, so don't worry, she just said it. But yeah, I'm a choreographer, that's a key thing. I'm currently, and I've been for the last few years, the resident pitch coach at Wyra, which is Telefónica's O2 accelerator. And I say this because if anybody is interested in working with them, if your startup can somehow work with Telefónica, I'd be more than happy to introduce you. I always introduce startups because I love to help. These are the sorts of clients I have. So as she said, from like big to small, lots of institutions and so on. Let's move on. So what I'll share with you, I call it the blank canvas. So essentially, I'll teach you a couple of things that you can do with your body that together, when they work together, and I'll share with you just kind of the key parts. There's more. I have a 3-part training that takes 12 hours, so this is the idea is that you will focus your mind so you can have more mental space to be able to tackle what's happening in the moment with communication. Are you losing people? Do you need to, pivot your message a bit because it's not getting through? Those kind of things. So it works because my background is in dance. I'm also a yoga teacher, so there's a lot of presence stuff embedded in what we're going to be doing. Okay, so the things I'd like to have in mind is these are the 4 pillars of my method, and authenticity, obviously you need to sound like yourself, you cannot sound like someone else, and then when it comes to body language, the body never lies. So if I'm nervous or tired or someone does something and I freak out, it will show. It's very hard to control body language, but I can't control how much my pupils will dilate. But I do have control over stuff like this. I'm going to show you, and it overlaps with this, with noise, the concept of noise. So I have control over these kind of things. You know, the kind of loss of movement that I could be doing, and then you're like, oh, she's wrong. Right? Then this becomes like the Mariana show. So who thinks I'm from Spain? Oh, good. Yeah, no. Where do you think I'm from?
We know you're from Argentina.
Great example. So that's kind of, you know, I'm very comfortable doing all that body language. It's like I've been doing it all my life. It's okay. I'm kind of tired. I've been in Bristol coaching clients all morning, and I took the train. So this is also happening. Like I would rather be slouching. So I call it professional body language. You learn to do it, and then you can automate it. So it will eliminate all that noise that makes people focus on you rather than on what you're saying. Presence, you want to be here and now, and when you put attention in your body, you do that. You can kind of put your attention on your hands and your speech, and at the same time be thinking about what you're having for dinner later, or am I doing this right? Those kinds of self-talk that come in when we are presenting. And the last bit is engagement. You have control over what you project, what you're giving to other people. As I said before, slouching, or maybe if I was more like, okay, I'm exhausted. And if I did the whole presentation like this, and all these really just things, but I'm not projecting my voice and I'm trying to drag it up a bit. And very soon, your energy level will be like, and you're like, please take me out of here. So I know I have control over what I'm giving, and then I'm making you feel like that in my presence. And chances are you're not going to remember much about this except one or two things, but you will remember how you felt when you were with me. And that's my brand. So in the beginning that said embody your brand. When you have an opportunity to share what you're doing, if you are aware that what you leave in the room in terms of energy, clarity, not only a message, will have an impact. And that's the reason why people then come and want to talk to you. Not everybody, but the ones that connect with your message, because you manage somehow to establish a connection. And as I said earlier, very important, if I make it about me, I get very self-conscious. Not only that, my brain gets very distracted with these kinds of movements, not only mine, everybody's. Because the brain has to compute what I'm doing, where am I, and all of that. Or like if I look around, I get more visual information. I get distracted. Whereas what I'm going to show you is how to stand, clean, have a clean posture, how to look at people so that you keep directing your attention to them so they direct their attention to you. And it's a positive loop. And we're going to look also at, that's eye contact, posture, and hand gestures. What do I do with my hands? Massive. But I focus mostly on you. So not you. I have all the stuff that I know I need to do with my body because you'll be looking at it and so on. I trained it just like you train riding a bicycle or driving a car. And you know how when you drive a car you can have a really awful argument with your partner, but you keep driving and you don't crash? Or you can the kids are doing something in the back and it's okay. Because your body learned how to take all the information at the same time. So it's very similar to that. Is learn a technique to use while you speak. Hand gestures. Let's stand up and find a partner, someone you're going to work with. You're going to be talking very good for that 5 minutes. Anybody doesn't have a partner? Here? Anybody needs a partner? Someone here? Okay. Okay, so hand gestures. Hands take up a lot of mental space. So when they scan people, to see how the body works, the brain connection, so on, when a hand moves, suddenly it's like it lights up all across the brain. Which means that when the hands are moving, there's a lot of activity. When the hands are steady, there's less activity, so I have more focus. But people need me to move my hands so they understand. We are wired to read body language and trust it more than we trust words, and we also come up with better words when we use our hands. For example, toddlers learn, the toddlers who point at things, like lamp and window, the pointers, they learn twice as fast as the ones who don't point. They learn words. So we learn by using our bodies. It's important. So we cannot just go like, okay, I'll just want water. Not an option. So I'm going to look at finding a place where you can keep them if you don't want to be moving them all the time, and there's a couple of places. Then we learn to steady them so that we learn to use them purposefully. So you want your hands to be saying the same thing and emphasizing important stuff that you're saying. Okay, so talk to your partner about, so one person at a time will speak, right? So Mary is working with me. So Mary is the first person to speak, so we'll call her person A and I'm person B. So A is going to talk about what something she's passionate about. And don't do introductions. Don't do like, oh hi, I'm Mary, and no, just go like, today I really care about, and it has to be anything that you're very passionate about in a positive way or a negative way, like, political situations that are going on right now, that make you angry.